In your assignments for this class, you're asked to say whether you think a speech is good or not. And I thought I would make a short video to answer the question, how do we determine if a speech is good? To determine if a speech is good, traditionally, most people would look at efficacy. Did it work? Were people persuaded? Did they get the information and act on it? Did they understand what they were supposed to do, etc.? If it's instructional, informational, persuasive, that would govern whether it's good or not, is did it meet its goal? The problem with that is it's not all that ethical. It puts forward the idea that one could do anything you want in a speech as long as you met the goal that you had for it. You could make any kind of argument you wanted or provide whatever kind of a spin on the information you wanted. And as long as you got the audience to understand or to agree with you, it would be fine. Efficacy ignores the moral and ethical dimension of what we can do if we're powerful speakers and we use our voice to get people to do stuff. On the other side is maybe the one that's a little bit of a faux academic approach, which is, well, did they do a good job putting it together? And this is kind of maybe your attitude if you don't like the grade you got. You say, well, my speech wasn't very good, but I worked really hard on it and I did a lot of research and I put it together in a really good and right way. This is sort of the more of the content or the good intentions kind of mode, that even if the audience completely ignores it, it was still a good speech because they used the right evidence, the right research, the right organization, and put it together really well. So it still is a really good speech. The problem with that one, though, is that speech traditionally, in ancient times, according to the Greek sophists and the Roman instructors of the gymnasia and modern rhetoricians, the audience is pretty much how we determine whether speeches are good or not. We can't avoid the audience at all. We have to look at a speech and whether or not it considers audience and appeals to that audience in a way that gets its point across. So what we wind up having are two extremes, one of efficacy and one of intent. And both seem really insufficient to determine what a good speech is. What we can do is we can forward audience as the entire thing, but not in a term of efficacy and not in the terms of, well, I tried to do a good job, but somewhere in the middle with this idea of the audience as being the thing at which all speech is aimed. And therefore, your conception of audience in how you aim your speech might be the way to determine if a speech is good or not. Let's take an example. Let's say we know an audience has a really bad assumption. Is it okay to use that bad assumption to get what we want and to shorten the amount of work we have to do? Some people would say yes, but in this model, in efficacy, you'd say yes. But in this model that I'm pushing to you, we would say no, it's not good. The speaker also has the opportunity to increase that audience's ability to think, their ability to reason, and their ability to be a little bit more cautious with what kinds of ideas they accept. A good speaker always has authority that they create with the audience. That authority can be used to get the audience to rise above where they are in the beginning of the speech to making better decisions, clearer decisions, decisions based on better reasoning near the end. In this model, it wouldn't be okay to use bad assumption to get your point across. You would have to try to speak in a way to say, a good audience, a smart audience, or an audience of people from this place who are like us would not accept X, Y, and Z. So you want to look for these elements in what makes a good speech. Obviously, agreement is a very good metric, but not the most ethical one. Obviously, working hard to make sure you have really good information is good, but doesn't go far enough. The good speech exists somewhere in the middle, somewhere in a place where you have really good work on the speech and the audience gets something new to think about. But most importantly, and for most excellent speeches, it's the audience considers themselves as a different kind of audience, a superior audience, one that thinks the way we would want our partners in democracy to think and to reason and to listen. And I think that is the measure that makes really good speech. So elements of this are parts when the speaker talks about who we are. They put themselves in a community with the audience. They're not telling the audience what to think or do, or they're saying it's me and it's you. That kind of stuff is not very good speaking at all. Instead, there's a collectivity built because it's a collective action. The speaker and the audience will need to work together to make the good happen. Another thing to look for is references to the local and to the immediate in the situation of why they brought themselves there. And if they're looking at the audience, they're saying we want to be better people or better thinkers or just better at dealing with these problems, that's another sign of a good speech in the sense that I'm using the term good. Another way to analyze a speech and say if it's good is to look and see what kind of public discourse the speech created. Did the speech get a lot of buzz? Have people talked about it quite a bit? Is it creating more public dialogue and discourse, more places for agreement and disagreement and thought to happen? Thought doesn't happen without expression, without articulation. In fact, when you think to yourself, you often think in terms of speech. You think in terms of language. It's very difficult to get away from it, as much as people might want to. So, if a speech creates a lot more public discourse about an issue, it might be a good speech. If it gets people talking, because as we talk, we're sharing ideas, we're thinking, we're reassessing our values, we're reassessing our positions on things. We're reassessing our positions on things, and there's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than having a chance to reassess our values and reassess where we are on things. So those are some ideas. There are other ways, other reasons why speech might be good. Use a little creative thought and come up with some of your own ways of how speech can be good. I've given you about 4 different ways to do it. I look forward to seeing what you say about the speeches you chose to analyze.